Jim Kavanagh here, also known online as the Polemicist. You can find me on Twitter at the Polemicist _ and at my Substack. All links are below. I haven't been saying much for about a month or so since my last original post about the important events in the world, namely the situation in Gaza, Palestine, and the war in Ukraine. That's because, one, I've written and said a lot about them, which I still think covers the fundamentals in a relevant way. I'll put links to various articles below. And two, because the situation just gets not only more horrible, but more absurd every day. I'll say something today about what's happening in Gaza. Of course, the Israelis continue their rampage in Gaza. The decision of the International Court of Justice, finding that there's a plausible case for Israeli genocide in Gaza, was surprisingly strong and welcome. It was really fantastic and inspiring to see the superb case made by the brilliant and diverse South African legal team. I especially loved the stunning presentation by the Irish woman, every point of which was ratified by the court. This decision will provide a real political and ideological asset to any country or party that wants to oppose the ongoing Israeli genocide. And it will be a tool for people who want to use legal means against individuals and other governments throughout the world to stop them from participating in this genocide. But this decision will not have any result in time to stop the slaughter of the Gazan people by bombardment, starvation, and disease, or their forthcoming coerced voluntary emigration. Israel and the Western media will ignore the decision. There will be no enforcement. Israel will be a pariah to most of the world, and it does not give a damn. In fact, the absurd and gratuitously cruel reaction of Israel and its U.S. sponsor to this decision was to defund UNRWA, the UN's major Palestinian relief and humanitarian aid organization, and to send Israelis to block humanitarian aid trucks from entering Gaza. The other welcome development is the decision by the Ansarallah movement, known as the Houthis, to prevent ships doing business with Israel from entering the Red Sea. This is the first military action that anyone has taken to challenge Israel and its American sponsor and to help the people of Gaza. It's an action that gets legitimacy from the ICJ finding that there's a plausible case for a genocide in progress, a decision which mandates every country in the world to do what it can to stop that genocide in progress. The Houthis are doing what they can militarily. Ansarallah and South Africa then are both heroes who stood up first, each in their own way, to offer effective resistance to the Israeli-American genocide in Gaza. They stand out in the world. Of course, the reaction of the United States, which is committed to protecting the Zionist genocidal project, has been to attack Yemen militarily for trying to interfere with the genocide. Not only have the Houthis not been intimidated by these American actions, they've been joined by resistance groups in Iraq and Syria who are themselves attacking American military bases that have no right to be in their countries. That has led to American casualties and to a widening of American and British attacks on resistance forces in the region, which are characterized by Western media and American politicians as proxies of Iran. The ultimate point here, for the Israelis and for the most fanatical American surrogates, which include many American congresscritters and senators, is to get the United States to attack Iran. The absurdity of the Biden administration's positions, saying, we know it won't stop the Houthis from attacking the ships, but we'll bomb them anyway, and saying, we don't want to extend the war, but we're going to attack a bunch of other countries, and saying, we don't know if the Iranians are responsible, but it doesn't really matter, makes somewhat more sense when you see the point, the war on Iran, that it's heading toward. As I argued in my article, Israel's solution to Gaza war with Iran which I'll link below, this has been one of Israel's main objectives since this started. The fundamental issue here, as Israel and the Palestinian resistance understand, is that the future of Zionism is at stake. There will be one of two possible outcomes. Either Israel will agree to some restoration of Gaza and a whole Palestinian polity under less than complete Israeli control and greater than previous independence and international protection, which would be a defeat and a restriction of the Zionist project, and which therefore Israel will not accept, or Israel will complete the program of extermination and expulsion of the millions of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank that it is now attempting, fighting off whatever military and political resistance comes its way, and establishing full and final control of Gaza and the West Bank from the river to the sea with whatever Palestinian remnant remains. Despite the delusion of liberal American foreign policy wonks who think they can talk Israel into accepting something else, Netanyahu has been emphatically clear about what the Israeli agenda, not just his, but Israel's agenda, is full control of all the territory from the river to the sea. Netanyahu and Israeli Zionists are also convinced that they cannot achieve that outcome unless, and can achieve it if, Iran is defeated and taken off the table as a linchpin of the axis of resistance. Netanyahu and Israeli Zionists also know that Iran is a big, powerful country that can't be invaded and occupied, and that will do a lot of damage to Israel in any conflict, and that only might be taken off the table for another 20 years or so by a full American air attack, supplemented with the destructive power of Israel's own nuclear weapons. Israel wants the war with Iran and will not enter it without using all the destructive power at its disposal. It will be a nuclear war, and here is how it will go down. Israel will threaten to nuke Iran unless the U.S. agrees to a joint attack. The U.S. will go along, thinking and saying it's doing so in order to prevent a nuclear war, as administration officials will tell the Washington Post. The war will start, and Israel will nuke Iran. The U.S. will say nothing about it, except the usual, Israel has a right to defend itself line. Israel can do nothing that the United States would oppose, as the Gaza genocide demonstrates. Not only could Israel nuke Tehran without American objection, it could nuke New York. If, as it would if it thought necessary, Israel were to nuke New York or some other Western city in a false flag attack blamed on Iran, the U.S. government would go along with the ruse to protect Israel from condemnation. In fact, if Israel were to nuke New York out of Samson option anger at being defeated, the U.S. government would pretend they didn't know who did it. Kid yourself not, Israel will blow up the world before it will accept defeat. And kid yourself not, the United States would accept it. The American government is not persuading Israel to accept another agenda. It is being dragged into Israel's. America's commitment to Zionism has it accompanying Israel on the blue and white road, leading through battles with Hamas, with Houthis, with Iraq and Syrian popular militias, and with Hezbollah, a battle that will require direct American intervention, to a climactic battle with Israel's wicked green witch, Iran. You may think that's crazy, because it is. Of course, there is enormous risk. Israel might lose everything. And of course, tens or hundreds of thousands or millions of people will be killed. But what else can they do? What else can Israel and the United States think offers the possibility of defeating Iran, the core of the axis of resistance, or at least setting it back for another 10 or 20 years? Creating a situation that gives Zionism 10 or 20 more years to keep going is all Israel can ever hope for. And for it and the United States, nothing is more important. The purpose is to save the Zionist enterprise and give it a future. So I'm afraid that is the likely trajectory of what we're seeing develop right now. There are a couple of things that might derail the train. One is the intervention of an outside power. The UN can do some things, and or a bloc of economically powerful countries could do some things that would divert or delay the depopulation of Gaza and the rush toward regional war. But as long as the US is unconditionally committed to pulling Israel's feet out of any fire, Israel will be able to plow forward through any such nuisance obstacles. It would take the intervention of a military power by a country or bloc of countries with serious military power to interrupt the Israeli-US agenda in a potentially decisive way. I repeat what I think would be a game-changing intervention. A group of nations embodying serious military power, presumably including a country like Russia, should organize a flotilla of comprehensive humanitarian and reconstruction aid into Gaza, announcing that its determination to fight its way through any Israeli or American resistance. It would not be an attack on Israel. It would be sanctioned by the ICJ ruling as an intervention to prevent what has been found plausibly to be an ongoing genocide in a territory that Israel has no right to control. It would be an international humanitarian mission that could not be construed as a terrorist attack or blamed on Iran. Israel and the US would have no plausible justification and would be taking a great risk to try and stop it with military force. It's a great idea, but I'm afraid it's not going to happen. The other possible impediment to war on Iran is the success of the resistance groups along the way. Israel is determined to remove, or at least reduce to insignificant weakness, the Gazan resistance groups, including Hamas, PIJ, and the PFLP, and the even stronger Hezbollah. We won't even talk about the off-site resistance groups like Ansarallah and the popular militias in Iraq and Syria. For Israel, it's crucial that the hundreds of thousands of Israeli Jews who have left their homes near the Gaza border and near the Lebanese border are able to return to their homes and live in the comfortable state of colonial mastery that is necessary to stabilize the Zionist project. This fear that they will never be able to live without repeatedly coming under attack from the children, siblings, and parents of the Palestinian people they have killed and whose homes they have stolen. That and the resulting exodus of tens of thousands of Israeli Jews back to their original homelands where they can live in peace and security as equals without the colonial mastery bit is the most fatal flaw of Zionism as a colonial enterprise in the 21st century. It's the fatal flaw of all racist supremacism once the inferiors start to fight back. As North Carolina activist Robert Williams, author of the book Negroes with Guns, understood in making the forceful case for armed resistance to white supremacist oppression in the United States. In a conversation with Kathleen Cleaver in 2004, his wife Mabel explained that when the black community armed itself, that forced murderous white racists, quote, to make a calculation, are they willing to risk their superior life to take your inferior life, end quote. Similarly, Hamas and its Gazan allies have made it clear that Jewish settlers' superior lives are and will always be at risk from the armed resistance of the inferior human animals they thought they could safely subjugate, who turn out to be not inferior at all in deadly armed combat. Why should they take that risk and that blow to their superiority complex when they can return to their homes on the east bank of the Hudson? Hamas and other resistance groups, especially Hezbollah, are going to put up a hell of a fight. Israel cannot, for long, keep hundreds of thousands of people out of their homes, hundreds of thousands mobilized in the army, and take thousands of casualties before the allure and the very feasibility of the Zionist colonial project starts to dissipate. This is the fundamental element of a strategic defeat of Zionism that determined armed resistance can hasten. It's also, however, why Israel does not have time and will want to quickly extend the war to Iran. First of all, precisely because of their superiority complex, Israel does not believe the Palestinian resistance is capable of fighting so well. It must be the Iranian devil behind it all. And secondly, Israel will not be able to defeat the resistance, especially Hezbollah, without direct American intervention, which is easier to recruit against the Iranian threat. So, I am not sanguine, and I think it's going to be very hard to avoid a disastrous regional, if not global war. There's all kinds of talk now about a new ceasefire agreement. But I think a lot of it is American policymakers trying to convince themselves that they can talk Israeli Zionists into being reasonable and peaceful, and Palestinian fighters into being calm and just a little patient. We'll have a real quick peace process this time, pinky swear. Nobody's buying it. As I said above, both Israel and the Palestinian resistance understand that the future of Zionism, and therefore of the Palestinian movement, is at stake right now, and neither wants or thinks it can afford to put it off. The question has been called, and an answer will be given. Israel has said clearly that it demands control of everything from the river to the sea. That is, the final defeat and subjugation of the Palestinians. Hamas and all the other resistance groups have said they demand an end to the fighting in and an Israeli exit from Gaza. That is, an unmistakable strategic defeat for Israel and the beginning of the end of Zionism. Neither wants what they know the Americans think they can be made to want, that is, the same old, infinitely deferred Groundhog Day peace process, whose only purpose is to keep Zionism idling in place while calming the Western and American political waters. Israel wants more and knows it can rely on the United States to go along with any moves it makes and ensure that it doesn't lose control of everything from the river to the sea. And Hamas and the Palestinian resistance need more and know that Israel is right. The peace process will be settled on the battlefield in the next few months. So that's kind of a bummer, I guess. But wait till next time when I come back and tell you what I think about Ukraine. So that's me for now. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at @thepolemicist_, and visit and subscribe to my Substack. All links are below. See you next time.